everyone. We're here with another episode of StarrCast Podcast. So we've been talking for months about the big demand for wellness. Everybody wants to be in the wellness business, but it used to be known as the spa business for many of us. And my guest today is someone that has been a consulting client for time to time. And she also ventured into the spa business many years ago. And I asked her to come on today and tell her story because I think it's really interesting. So I'm going to introduce Lisa Baer, the former owner of Haven Spa in Rhinebeck, New York. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
It's great that you could join us today. And I'm kind of laughing because you and I usually talk when you're like out in the basement and there's no signal, or you're out back outside because someone's in the office. This might be the first time we ever talked where we both are in front of a camera and can see each other.
Could be. And one task is unfocused to have a podcast.
Well, it's great that you could join us today because I really thought that your story was compelling. So Lisa, you went to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, tough school. What did you study in college?
Well, I started out in physics, but then quickly moved to design and basically got a degree in graphic design and minor in art history. I love design, still love design. I think that's part of what led me into the spa because of the spa industry, because it's so aesthetically pleasing. And once I graduated from RIT, I made my way into advertising. I initially was in graphic design, but I didn't love that too much, too many details. So I became an art director, and I worked at Gray Advertising in Manhattan for not quite a decade. And in their beauty, fashion, and fragrance department, our main client was Procter & Gamble.
That's a big client. And Gray was a huge company.
Yes.
I mean, you say that so modestly, but everyone was dying to work for companies like that. How did you get in there?
Persistence.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, to be completely honest, my first job was with Conair, the hair company.
Uh-huh.
And I worked on package design. But my goal was to get to New York City. I came from North Carolina and went to RIT. And from there, if I was going to be in advertising, New York is where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to interview and get hired by an amazing woman named Alice Erickson. She was one of the most powerful people in beauty, fashion, advertising at the time. And she sort of had her own boutique agency underneath Gray.
Mm.
And our main client was CoverGirl, but we did lots of fragrance brands. We revived Giorgio Beverly Hills for a short period of time. We worked with Massimo, we worked with Hervé Leger. We did some Pantene work. But what we did a lot of, because it was Procter & Gamble, were focus groups. Tons of it, studying consumers' emotions and what affected them in a print format and in a TV format.
I'm curious. Let me ask a question about that before you go on. When you do those focus groups for a big company like P&G, are you in the room with them, or are you watching them being facilitated by someone else?
You're behind a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
See you. They're told that there's people back there, but there's a moderator. And basically, many times it's as simple as showing a perspective commercial that we had shot and put together, and to get input from them. How's it work? And especially in different demographics,
Right.
At that time, there was in the 90s, I was there in the 90s, there was, sort of rebel, 20 to 30-year-olds that we were looking for in fragrance. There's very different. Fragrance is an interesting market to sell because it's all about emotion.
All about. There's nothing really to show, right?
That's all you're selling.
Yeah.
And from an advertising and a conceptual standpoint, it's really interesting because you're trying to create an emotion. So, because they can't smell it, you can't smell it.
Right.
You can't visibly show it.
I mean, it's marketing an idea, really. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I found that extremely interesting. I think I grew a love for what affected people, and what made people, what would move them, and that type of thing. So I spent, like I said, about a decade there. I did tons of TV, traveled all over the world doing it, and inadvertently stayed in a lot of really nice hotels. That was on the tail end of the go-go advertising era, when there was immense budgets and lots of fun.
That's a nice perk.
It was a huge perk, and it was a huge education, for me. We just, I loved wonderful hotels. I learned to really love and appreciate service and the art of service. And I think all those pieces sort of led me to really having a passion for the wellness and spa industry.
Oh, really? So that's how it came from hospitality.
Yeah, I think from hospitality, some from beauty. Interesting enough, my business, when I opened it, we only did skincare and massage. We didn't do, we eventually added in nails, but simply for more of a convenience. And we added in makeup, and again, convenience. So we didn't do hair. We never did hair. Upon, starting to put a business plan together and really put this idea and dream that I had into fruition, I did a lot of travel with my husband. My husband is a physician, and we studied a lot of spas in France, and in Europe, and the US as well, but also the history of spas, super interesting, the old spas that you can find in France are really interesting, and how they've had an appreciation for a very long time, for wellness services. And then in Asian cultures, we were in Thailand and different places, and just how they really had such an appreciation for, the ritual
very much so
of wellness, and the bathhouses, the concept that you went to a bathhouse once a week. We went to Morocco and studied that a bit, and it was wonderful.
So you were working at Gray, feeling like, I'm not going to stick with this, but you had this idea for a spa business born out of your Gray experience?
Well, not exactly. So my husband was in med school, and he took a position in Hudson Valley. And the Hudson Valley is about an hour and a half outside Manhattan. And I didn't want to commute. I was at the age I was going to have a family within the next 5 years. And so I couldn't do advertising in a mid-market. Like, I just...
Not after you've been in New York City.
No, it just, I literally had absolutely no interest in it. I did a little bit of consulting with some other beauty brands for a while. I worked with Revlon and some other companies while I was working on a business plan. But I also had a real desire to be an entrepreneur, and open my own business. And so in the Hudson Valley, when we moved there, and my husband took a position, it was 1998, 99, 2000, high-end service, and specifically day spa, just really didn't exist. And it wasn't done well at that point. I mean, I'm sure you recall, day spa sort of evolved out of the salon, that
right,
skincare, one room or a couple rooms in the back for massage. And that's all that was there. But yet the Hudson Valley was starting to get a lot of attention from Manhattanites as second homes. The sophistication of the client or people that live there was growing, and the need was growing. And, so I owned my business for 20 years. And I must say that just continued. That was just the area just continued to attract, that type of demographic.
So you moved up to the Hudson Valley, and you decided, okay, I can't commute. I'm going to open a business. You wrote the business plan. You did the research. How did you get funded the first time?
I had some family who helped invest, and I took an SBA loan. And was very conservative. And I originally, my business plan was not to quite be as big as we ended up being. I found a niche in the market, and from day one, we did extremely, extremely well in the business, which was, I thought, going to be maybe, we'd be 4 days a week. We did really well from day one.
How big was the first iteration of Haven?
So initially, we had 4 estheticians and 3 massage therapists, and we're in a beautiful colonial revival home right on the edge of the village of Rhinebeck. And it had been a physician's office before, but we restored it. And it's 3 levels and beautiful grounds. We put in outdoor fountains, and there's a beautiful porch that people relax on. And so I actually looked initially to either going into like right in the heart of town in more of a storefront, or this house. And I think it was a pretty crucial decision that we chose the house, because the house has proven to have been very nurturing. And these beautiful old historical houses, something about it really people want to come into, they're attracted to, and it lends itself to relaxing. Not that you couldn't create the same thing in a different space. It worked for us.
So you bought the house property.
Yeah.
And the house came with property, which maybe wouldn't have happened in a storefront in the village. Right.
Yeah. And it also allowed us to grow to the level that we did.
So you opened with 7 technicians, it sounds like, and maybe did you have nails at that point?
No. We didn't have nails for a couple of years. No.
So tell us, you say you were busy from day one. How did you market the business?
Well, marketing was my background.
Right.
So I knew that right out the gate. So we started with radio. I did a lot of print back then. We did a lot of direct mail back then. I didn't even have a website. That didn't exist back
then. Right.
Crazy enough. And I knew marketing. So I knew I tracked it very steadily. Where we saw growth, where we saw results, that's where we would target in. And initially I did a lot. As we grew, I'd say after the first 13 years, I actually kept pulling back on marketing because we were selling ourselves. I was dependent on my staff selling themselves and that repeat client. I think the other huge focus was, for me, always was, and I think any successful, is that the quality of service be there, that client leave with not only their expectations met, but beyond met, and that we're guaranteed to come back. And we always had a huge focus on that.
So how did you know? I mean, you weren't from beauty. How did you know how to set up the rooms and what products to bring in?
Well, I went and got an aesthetic degree. In the meantime of starting to set the business up, I went and got an aesthetic degree. And so I learned aesthetics because one of the first challenges for me was I didn't know anything about touching people. And so to learn the industry, I did that, and that helped a lot. I went to some conferences. I hired some good consultants. Eventually we went to Win Business and did their programs. And I did a lot of research. I always say some of the best education is just to go have services, go have as many as you can, see as many spaces as you possibly can, understand what works and doesn't work if you can.
No, that's so important. I'm always urging prospective owners the same, like, know what you want to deliver in terms of service, but you need to know how it feels. We're always concerned with how it will look and how's the room decorated, but the client's on the table with their eyes closed most of the time. Like, how is it feeling what we're delivering? And then, of course, there's the customer service around the actual technical service, which is equally important. And I would think in Rhinebeck, with discerning New Yorkers as your client, that was also a focus for you.
For sure. I mean, and part of our goal was that So Rhinebeck is and was a huge second home community to people in Manhattan. And we wanted to be able to offer the level of service and the services that you could get in a metropolitan city, but in a more relaxed setting outside of the city. And that worked. People would rather have their massage when they're not, running around the city, running in between, one hectic day to the next. And I think that's what made us really have a successful business initially, is because at that point in time, back in the early 2000s, there was a big discrepancy of the service that you would receive, even the food you would have in Manhattan versus out in, we're not even suburbia. I would call us more rural. And so understanding what service is, that was one of my challenges. So when I first had employees, was educating them on a level of service that they had never had.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting them to deliver, and my client was expecting it, because that was the client we were marketing towards. We were marketing towards a very sophisticated client. Was not, I think not doing hair back at that point helped us do that, because massage wasn't something that everyone had all the time. It sounds crazy now to say that.
I know, it's the same. When I remember the spa group that I worked at, we had to put massages in packages to get people to have them, right. And this is back in the mid 90s, I'm going to say. And people were thinking, well, what's going on back there? I don't know if I want to go in a room with a strange person. I mean, it's the number one service around the world now, but it is hard to imagine that what you're saying is very true.
Oh, it was a huge stumbling block with my zoning. So I come into this town. It's a one-stoplight town, very old, somewhat affluent, but run by like an older sort of Rhinebeckian. And my zoning was almost like I wouldn't say it a comedy show, but they literally, there were people on the zoning board thought I was putting in some sort of red light district.
A brothel.
And to their point, I had to kick, in the first 2 years, I had to kick 2 men out calling the police because they were not satisfied with their service. And it was like, we're not offering that service.
We're not that kind of spa, sorry.
That's not the type of massage we're doing here.
That's funny. So you were busy right away. What year was it that you actually opened Haven?
So we opened in 2001, and we were busy right away, but don't get me wrong, we worked really, really hard, and we grew substantially, literally almost every year that I was in the business. In 2007, 2008, there was a little bit of a flattening, pullback because the market at that point. But one thing I think we did really well is where we had success, we built on. I was very, always very interested in numbers, looking at what's moving things. From the moment, I think we're maybe one of the first to start tracking reviews, but always very focused on our reviews. How are the reviews looking? We originally had Demand Force, and then we went with was offering, but we were always tracking our reviews, incentivizing staff on reviews, and contacting. I always had one associate, generally as a front desk associate, who was responsible in responding to every single review, and also reaching out to any review that didn't seem like they were happy. Part of our dialogue at the front desk was the front desk had to always ask, how was your service today? Since anything that wasn't wonderful, we wanted to know why. I wanted to know why, because we wanted them coming back. And so
would the guests tell you? Were they forthcoming?
Well, I always said 1 out of 9. I don't know. I drew it out of the sign. 1 out of 9 will tell you and potentially bring back. But just consider, that 50% of the people or more that'll tell you something just won't come back.
Right. No matter what you say.
Yeah. Or they're not going to come back. They're not going to take the energy to actually complain. They just won't come back. So if you have someone who actually speaks forward, obviously you get pretty good at deciphering the real complaints and, people are just bad mood for the day. But I always presented them to my staff. We always had a one-on-one meeting if they got a review that wasn't great. And we wanted to see, is there a learning experience here?
Good for you.
We can gain from that so that we move forward, because a lot of times the complaints are things that you learn from, you don't even know that who knows what is driving someone crazy. And it just happened to come up.
So you're busy. You've got the 4 facials, 3 massage rooms going. At what point did you realize that you could do more?
Well, I would say one of the benefits was our facility was large. It's how large is it? It's 4,000 square feet. So 3 floors. So we always had room to expand. I always was hiring. We're always hiring, still this day, always hiring, always looking, always interviewing. And as soon as the books in my mind were 70 to 80% booked, we needed to be hiring. We needed to bring more people on, because I didn't want, a completely booked out schedule means you're turning people away.
So at what point, Lisa, did you decide to bring nails on?
I think we brought nails on, and my memory's not completely great, but probably about the third or fourth year. And nails, nails was another business, right? Back initially, it wasn't like a necessity. Now, it slowly became a necessity in everyone's life. It also was very much a convenience for clients. We have a beautiful nail room. It overlooks a fountain. It's a room that's a bay window. It was originally in this historical home, the dining room. So it's a very, very relaxed setting for nails. And people loved it. I mean, if I could have staffed 15 nail techs, we would have, even today, they would be booked.
So you had a little bit of a slowdown in the financial crisis times of 2007-8, and then growth picked up again?
Absolutely. Well, from, I would say 2000, if I was to look at my numbers, from 2015 until COVID, we grew immensely. I think we grew immensely, one, because their awareness of the benefits of spa services has been growing, as we all know. It has become less of a luxury and necessity.
Do you think there was a catalyst for that after 2008 that you recall, or you feel like it was just organically growing?
I don't have that good a memory, but I think it was just organically growing.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, the pullback in 2008 was simply financial,
right.
On the Wall Street lost their jobs. There was just a little bit of a reorganization in where people could spend their money. And so, but at the same time, as you know, we had the industry of skincare growing with momentum, and people more and more aware of the benefits of skincare, and then the advanced skincare. And we, from day one, because I went to aesthetic school, and we had a medical licensure, we always looked for skincare products that drove results. So we were always doing TCAs, glycolics, lactics, every combination thereof, and constantly adding on to our equipment and what we were offering, and really, always having a goal of making sure what we were charging the client, they were definitely getting a value in, for sure.
So it sounds like your orientation to skincare from the beginning was a good bet in the long run, rather than focusing on massage first, rather.
Yeah. Well, massage, I mean, at this day and age right now, as long as it's a talented massage therapist, pretty great. I mean, skincare continues to grow. Skincare also has a really large retail component to it. It's also another significant factor in making that bottom line work, and also bringing that client back. And
probably a higher average ticket as well.
Oh, for sure. Yep. Absolutely. We actually right before I sold, launched a whole add-on menu to massage, which was doing really well, which I was excited about because at 20 years in, creating new concepts that you really hit home on, are great.
So you're booming along. It's 2018, 2019, huge demand. I know you were constantly hiring and shuffling and managing people in the front desk. And, there's a lot to that. How many employees did you have in 2019?
We had just shy of 40 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, service providers, some of which work 3 to 4 days a week.
Right. So 2020 comes, COVID comes. Tell us how that was for you.
Well, as everybody, you didn't know what was coming until it was already there. And I can remember distinctly right in March when we made the decision, it's time to shut down right now. And looking at, researching, what you would need to do to actually operate with a pandemic. And I can just remember a flighting thought being like, well, that might be the hardest way to run a business in the service industry. And it was.
When we can't touch our clients, it's a problem.
We can't touch our clients, and you have to screen them beforehand. All of these parameters that made it difficult for people to book, difficult for people to interact and sell and that type of thing. So anyway, we closed down, and we were closed from mid-March till I believe mid-August.
Wow.
But the entire time, we had weekly staff meetings. We reinvented our entire space. We just overhauled everything. I worked as hard during close down as I did regularly, with, the main goal of supporting my staff, making sure when they came back, we were ready to go and we were going to be as strong as we were before, because completely, February and January of 2020 were our strongest February and Januaries in 20 years. And so were the months prior to that. And
go figure, right? It's the worst time.
Oh, we were just everything had been fine-tuned. We had an amazing staff. I had practitioners that had been with me 18 years, managing staff anywhere from 7 to 11 years. So we had really fine-tuned a lot of things, and the economy was good, and people were spending money and they were traveling. Rhinebeck was huge. After Chelsea Clinton got married there, everybody knew who we were. So anyway, we just worked really hard. And I know when we opened back up, there was just so much energy and positive energy around, you know what? We got this. Nothing's us down. We worked like crazy. We planned and changed a million different things, as everyone did, set a million different protocols, retrained our entire staff, as everyone had to do, on new protocols and how we were going to operate with this. And I would say, even though it was the pandemic, it was just a wonderful feeling, because our team unit, we were all together. We had one focus. We were here to get back to our clients, and our clients, we did a campaign over COVID where we wrote to clients and said, look, most of our therapists have been furloughed. If you'd like to send in a tip for the future, it would be very, very beneficial for them to have that now. And I can't tell you how much revenue we drove for our therapist, and the cards that came in,
And how did you share that money with them?
We sent it directly to them.
So if the client said, this is for Sally, you'd send it to
yeah.
Sally.
Yep.
Did you get anonymous donations or donations that were just to the staff at large? Or?
No, mainly my staff, they all had very loyal repeat clients. We did a lot of VIP programs. We did a huge VIP party every year that we brought people in, and it was those clients, but lots and lots of them. And our service providers, they needed that emotionally to be like, yeah, we're going to do this. So we opened back up, and in the state of New York, you couldn't do facials, any skincare for, I think we were able to do skincare in October. So, we were very busy from the moment we came back. I would say we retained about 80% of our staff.
That's pretty good.
At that point, some people left the industry, we retained some staff that didn't come till later. They were too nervous back initially. But they're very busy, and we created every type of facial you could do with covering the mouth and neck and arms and all kinds of things. And so I would say, like most businesses, it was a reevaluation every week, probably even the first 6 months. What are we doing right? What can we improve on? How's this working?
Was part of the reason you're so busy, do you think, because people had fled New York and were staying in their summer Rhinebeck cottages longer? Or?
We had a brand new clientele. And I would say that brand new clientele, yes, was some that summer of 2020, but even 2021, I would say was even more, because, I haven't read a lot on it, but there's so many different stages of getting out of a pandemic, and many different, domino effects of it. Our area, the housing market went insane, absolutely insane. All of a sudden, everyone could work from home, and they wanted to, and they had gotten used to, and their kids had left the city to be upstate, and they loved it. And now there's this huge like trend of ups. I mean, it continues to grow. It continues to grow to this day. I just went to this wonderful, it's like a market fair that happened in Kingston, New York, a city that literally the 20 years I've lived in that area has been on an economic struggle, because from the time IBM left, now it's like Brooklyn moved to the Hudson Valley, and it's a beautiful, lovely place. And so yeah, it just continues.
So 2021 was a good year for the business.
2021 was a solid year for volume. It's a challenging year with staffing. There was a shortage. I mean, there's just a nationwide shortage of therapists after COVID. I mean, it was always challenging, but I'd never seen anything like that in my life.
Was it more massage for you, or aesthetics, or both, or front desk, or a little bit of all of it?
It was everything. It was really, really everything. Massage was probably the hardest hit initially. And I don't know. I mean, in my one business, I know therapists that had worked for us. Many did move out of the industry. Some had health concerns. They couldn't come back. So they reinvent themselves, and they reinvented themselves, and, that just felt better, right? For their needs of their family. It's hard work being a massage therapist.
For sure.
Yeah. And so, and I think I would say my experience, the worker changed after COVID. It's a different worker. I think the employer changed nationwide, from the largest corporation to the small business. The employer had to change, and is having to change now, and the employee changed.
So can you characterize some of the changes that you saw on either side?
I would say, starting the business, coming from advertising, I worked very hard. We all worked really, really, really hard. We did parties. We did, we were booked constantly. In our facility, we would easily do 100 to 120 services on a Saturday, which is a lot. After COVID, it's a different thing. People, we have much more scheduled breaks. I think we raised our prices. We had to numerous times. I would say it runs at a different pace than it ran before. And there's definitely some silver linings for that. But it's a different business. It's almost like, I don't know, it feels like the 80s to me before COVID.
That's funny. Go forward to go back. So 2022, you're starting to feel like maybe I'd like to take another path.
For me, my concept all along was I opened the business thinking I would do 10 years. And then it was so successful, and it's really enjoyable, honestly. There's so many things. It's exciting to be an entrepreneur. It's exciting to have a product that goes very well. After COVID, and I had just come to the stage in my life where, I needed to turn that chapter and move to something else. And the business is so viable, and there's so many opportunities, especially in the alternative health areas and Medi-Spa areas. We had done laser and IPL, and I'd partnered with a couple different physicians doing injections over the years. And I just saw the growth. It needed to move in that direction. And I knew, probably for a year that this is probably what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. So what was it that made you decide to finally, okay, I'm going to try to sell, or not, just I'm going to take a different path?
I think for me personally, it's a couple different things. I have kids who are moving out of high school into college. I wanted to be with them more. That was a big factor for me, honestly. Mm-hmm. I just felt like I could see the growth, and I didn't have all the energy to make it happen in that regard.
Mm-hmm. So, Lisa, tell us about the actual process, because as I recall, you first made a decision that you would close.
I did. So, well, I would back up, I would say. So initially I hired a large firm out of the city, a brokerage firm that would market the business and sell the business. And
they helped with the valuation, I would assume.
They did everything. They did the valuation. Yes. They, marketing, all of that type of stuff. And I actually prepped with them for quite a while. But after about a month of working with them, before it actually even launched, I decided they were the wrong partner. And mainly they were the wrong partner because I just didn't think they got service. Service is a very unique business to sell. They had sold lots of healthcare facilities, dentist offices, manufacturing, all those type of things. But service is very different. And I just did not feel like they understood and were going to bring in the right buyer for me. And it was really important for me to find the right person, and find someone that I really thought would understand and be able to move it to the next trajectory. So you brought in this partner, and they weren't the right partner. They weren't. So I ended up going with, I knew of another broker, an independent broker, who worked on her own. I had worked with her in business before, and she had sold small businesses before, restaurants. And so I met with her, and I knew it was going to be a better fit. And it was. She was an excellent partner. But ultimately I brought the buyer in. And that's, if you read anything, I don't know the percentage, but a lot of times it's the owner that brings the buyer. Well, I know, but there was a point when you decided, I'm not going to sell it, I'm just going to close it. Well, at one point, so when I decided to sell, it came very clear. I had to tell my staff. I'd been, the staff I had, I was very loyal to them, and I couldn't put it on the market without letting them know. And so I met with them and said, look, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to list the building and the business, and I'm sure it will sell. But at this date, I'm going to close whether we sell or we don't sell, and it'll be marketed after that. You can choose to stay or not to, but I'm hoping we find a partner between now and then. And we did. In 2 weeks, I had a partner. And it was an interesting concept to do it that way. I did it because I knew I had reached my point where I needed to move on to do something else. And the real estate market was extremely strong then, and I wanted to be able to move at that particular time. But I had a leaseholder who was doing injections and microneedling in an area of the Medi-Spa area of our business. And that ultimately became my buyer.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd went to her initially, I would have probably never even put her on the market.
Mm-hmm.
But many journeys in life, you never know how they're going to move.
No.
Because I had a finite date, it happened within that finite date.
So you think that was a good strategy, putting that date out there of like the decision is going to be made?
It worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
It worked for me. Yeah.
And did this buyer ultimately purchase the business and the real estate?
She's purchased the business and is in financing to buy the real estate.
Did you have to finance any of the sale for her?
I did finance part of the sale for her.
Mm-hmm.
And did an owner's note for part of it, which for me financially worked out well because I just replaced my salary.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So how would you say that whole process of the selling went? I mean, you had this broker to help you.
I did. I think honestly, so I made this happen in 6 weeks. That's unheard of.
Amazing.
Absolutely unheard of. But that's what I needed.
But Lisa, you are always that way. Like you dive in, roll up your sleeves and get things done. I always admired that.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your tolerance of many different things. Risk is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
Many buyers are going to take 6 months to do due diligence. And that just, because I was willing to close, it didn't give that type of time frame to do that in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And so, there's negotiations, but I believed in this person a lot. I knew them. I believed them. I believe they could do it. I still believe they can do it no matter what. I'm consulting at this time and helping them. So I wanted it to happen for them. So I made it happen.
Good for you. How does it feel to consult on the business that you once oversaw every detail of?
Well, I personally at a stage where I was ready to walk away. So if you're not ready to walk away, it might be different.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to fully own it and put their stamp on it and mark as much as possible. They are doing things some differently than I would do, some better, some just different. I found success in my formula. That doesn't mean someone else can find
Mm-hmm.
success in my formula. It's obviously going to be changed in some degree, and it is a little bit. But if it was my 5th business selling, I think I might have more insight, but it's only my first.
Only your first, but maybe more to come. Well, I think it's difficult for many people who birthed that as you did to do what you were able to do, which is walk away and say, okay, I'm good. I'm out of here. Because, it's like when you sell your house and then you're sad when they paint it, or, you have to detach yourself emotionally.
Yeah, for sure. And 100% of my staff stayed on. So I cared a lot about them and their, and still do, their stability and them carrying on. And from the moment that I said we were going to close, my staff all committed to stay to the very last day, which was wonderful.
That's amazing. And that's a testament to you as an employer, that they didn't all just ditch it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's how you have to be. You have to be open book. You have to be pure. You have to really, employ how you would want to be employed,
Mm-hmm. So you sold the business in the 21st year of operation, right?
Yeah.
What were the big lessons you would say you learned from that whole 21 years?
Well, I would say a surprise was that when I opened the business, I had this whole grand concept about the service we were offering and the service we were providing and the art of that and refining it. But 50% of my job was HR. That was a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one I didn't quite plan for in advance and learned. Do I wish I had a degree in HR? Absolutely. I learned it over time.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your question again?
So the business was more about HR than you expected.
Ton.
Yeah. I think that many owners say that. Honestly, Lisa, and you can remark what you think. I feel like owners come into the spa industry and they set up the facility and they put in place the menu and the pricing and they hire the people and then they think it will just run, right? Because maybe that's how it would work in an office, but somehow that's not how it works in the spa, is it?
Absolutely not. It's all about relationships. It's really about relationships and how you are helping these people thrive, because they're your product. Unlike a widget, your product is a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So, their growth, their stability, managing them, creating an environment where they have a respect for the business and partnership in it is it's huge. It is, I would say, the bulk of the work for sure. Because if the product is good, the clients are going to come.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, we're always teaching in management courses about the importance of investing in the team because they bring back the customer. It isn't the curtains or the water in your lounge, right? I mean, those are nice things, but what brings back a customer is the relationships they have with the people, both at your desk and, performing services.
For sure. And, the curtains and what's in the room, those are the fun things to do, right? Those are the things you want to think it's all about. No, it is about it's about that employee coming to work and really being passionate and committed to what they're doing and committed to their clients.
So looking back for you, a big surprise was the amount of time you'd have to spend on the human capital, as we call it today. Any other observations you can share with listeners about, what you learned from owning a service business?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That's open-ended. I mean, I would say it's in a strong, strong industry. It really is. There's just so much need for it and so much growth and potential where it can go from here for sure. I would say that, I know part of our success is I'm really on the numbers. Like there's no waiver room on what our numbers are and where they're going and being in check with them. I was never tuned out on any of that from day one. Monthly, I had to know exactly what was going on, if not tracking it. Weekly, I had weekly reports we looked at, from my retail manager to the front desk, to the sales of the aesthetic staff, to every single department. And seeing the nuances in them and recognizing the growth potential or where you're lagging and the deficits are and what to do.
So being on the numbers and really paying attention to the people, those were really, I think, it sounds like your two pillars of success.
For sure. We had a huge gift certificate business too. Tremendous gift certificate business. And what that did was that gave us the revenue to survive the highs and lows, if there were highs and lows, COVID. And it's an amazing thing when you can grow a gift certificate business that you ultimately have, you become your own bank. In some, you need to buy a laser machine. Well, you've got a gift certificate. If you're funding that gift certificate account, my goal was 100%. I didn't meet that goal in the first 5 to 7 years, but after that, we funded that gift certificate account 100% at all times, if not more. And I needed to buy a laser machine. I'd take a loan for myself, and that's liquidity. That's in any small business is very beneficial.
Well, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned the gift card business, because we're coming up on that season again, the big holiday gifting time. And it is so compelling to sell a lot of gift cards, but you do have to keep that money in reserve. I mean, when you went to sell the business, you had that cash in an account. How would it have impacted your sale if you had not?
Well, you would have had to discount the price. You to have discounted the price of your business if you weren't able to, and it's a negotiation, because how much of that gift certificate business is going to come in that you have there for them. But it definitely, and then for your new owner, all of a sudden they actually have a backup also. They immediately have their own sort of liquidity if they bought the business, but they've also have a gift certificate account that they can use to help them weather.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would do differently if you had to do it again?
If I had to do it again, well, I'm a huge fan of Medi-Spa. I think, you know, there's a lot of growth and opportunity there. And I think in my particular business, because we didn't do hair, nor did I have any interest in doing hair, you know, pulling in nurses quicker, pulling that in, and that grow, I think would have been beneficial, because ultimately the staffing of like the nail department, just really a lot of time and energy. And you know, there's just only so many nail techs out there.
I know you and I talked about it, and I'm sure I was in favor of, you know, transitioning out of nails, but you wanted to keep it for your guests.
Yeah. And I think education, I think one of the benefits that I had was I constantly sought education for myself and for my staff and consultants like yourself. And, you know, that as much as I could afford, I wish I could have afforded more or done more. So, yeah.
So what's next for you, Lisa Bear? What's the next entrepreneurial move?
I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out. Dealing with some real estate. Who knows? I haven't got there yet, but
enjoying time sending your kids off to college, no doubt.
I am. And, you know, being a working mom with a physician husband for 20 years, I feel like there's a million things that I have to address now. But yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'll figure it out.
Well, I wish you luck in whatever endeavor you have in the future. I'm sure it will be successful.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.